On Christmas morning, my 40-year-old son accidentally discovered that I had inherited $15 million. His wife didn't even try to hide her greed. She coldly stated, "That old man doesn't deserve that kind of money. It should be ours." They demanded I hand over every cent, claiming they were more entitled to it. After 4 decades of sacrificing everything for their comfort, I finally realized it was time to show them the true price of arrogance. What happened next left them in total ruin, regretting every word they had spoken. The evening had started peacefully. The crystal stemware clinked softly as my son, Stephen, began clearing the dinner plates. He was always careful around me during the holidays, but I could tell his mind was elsewhere. The remnants of our Christmas feast, the turkey, the roasted vegetables, the cranberry sauce, lay scattered across the table. Across from me sat his wife, Vanessa. She wore a practiced smile, but her eyes were darting around the room, calculating something I couldn't quite grasp. "Dad, you really went above and beyond tonight," Stephen said, balancing a stack of plates in his hands. That was the moment everything changed. As he turned toward the kitchen, his elbow caught the corner of my leather briefcase, which I had foolishly left on the side table. It tumbled to the hardwood floor, the latch snapping open. Legal documents spilled out like fallen leaves, scattering across the rug. I moved quickly, dropping my knees to gather the papers, but Stephen was faster. His eyes landed on the top sheet, and his breath caught in a sharp, audible gasp. 15. He couldn't even finish the sentence. His face went pale, then flushed with a mixture of shock and something far darker. Vanessa was already leaning forward, her neck craned like a bird of prey. The Christmas tree lights reflected off the white pages as I scrambled to collect them, my hands suddenly feeling heavy and clumsy. "Dad," Stephen's voice cracked. Did I read that correctly?" Vanessa set her fork down with surgical precision. "Read what correctly, honey?" I straightened up, pressing the documents against my chest. "It's nothing that concerns you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. $15 million, Stephen blurted out, the words tumbling over each other. "The inheritance document says $15 million. The silence that followed was dense, like the air right before a massive thunderstorm. Vanessa's painted smile finally cracked, revealing the hunger underneath. "Your brother?" she asked, her voice suddenly gentle and probing. "The one who passed away in Colorado?" I nodded, settling back into my chair with the papers gripped tightly in my lap. "Arthur died 4 months ago. The estate finally cleared probate last week. He built his architectural firm from the ground up and sold it just before he got sick. He never married, and he had no children. I was his only living family." Stephen sank into his chair as if his legs had turned to lead. $15 million? You never said a word." Vanessa's hand found Stephen's arm, her fingers drumming against his sleeve. That's incredible, David. What a blessing for you." The word "you" hung in the air like smoke, bitter and lingering. Stephen was staring at his hands, and I could practically see the gears turning in his head. Vanessa's grip on his arm tightened, her nails digging into the fabric of his shirt. "Dad," Stephen said slowly, "you don't really need all that money. I mean, at your age, what are you going to do with it?" The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I had raised alone after my wife, Sarah, died, and I realized I was looking at a complete stranger. "What exactly are you suggesting, Stephen?" I asked. Vanessa leaned forward, her voice taking on that honeyed tone she used when she wanted to manipulate someone. "We're family, David. Families should support one another. Think about Chloe and Leo," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the framed photos of my grandchildren on the mantel. "Think of their college funds, their future. We've been struggling, David. We could really use the help." "We're young," Stephen added, finally meeting my eyes. "We have dreams, plans. We could actually do something meaningful with that money. You've already lived your life." The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 9 p.m. Each deep tone felt like a warning. I looked at them, really looked at them, and a cold knot tied itself in my chest. "This isn't an appropriate dinner conversation," I said firmly. Vanessa's laugh was sharp and brittle. Money is always an appropriate conversation when it affects the family's well-being. Stephen has a point, David. We've been scraping by while you've been living comfortably. It's time to think about your legacy. I stood up slowly, my joints protesting the movement. I gathered the papers and turned toward the hallway. I think we should finish cleaning up. You're staying the night, aren't you? The guest room is ready. Vanessa and Stephen exchanged a quick, loaded look. Of course we're staying, Vanessa said. We have so much more to talk about. I headed toward my bedroom, the documents clutched in my hand. As I walked away, I heard their whispered conversation start again, urgent, hushed, and hungry. The house, which had always felt like a sanctuary, suddenly felt very small and suffocating. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling as the green glow of the digital clock cast shadows across the room. It was 11:45 p.m. I hadn't slept a wink. The old house creaked in the winter cold, and above my head, I could hear footsteps moving across the guest room floor. Then the voices started. The ceiling wasn't well insulated, and their words drifted down, muffled but unmistakable. The old man doesn't deserve $15 million. Vanessa's voice cut to the floorboards with a jagged edge. Vanessa, keep it down, Stephen hissed. He's asleep, Stephen, and I'm right. He's wasted his whole life being ordinary, working that boring project management job, living in this tiny house. We're in our prime. We could actually live a life of luxury. Maybe you're right, Stephen said. Those 4 words shattered something deep inside me. He has been pretty selfish lately. Remember when we asked for help with the new SUV? He acted like we were asking for his soul. Exactly. Vanessa's voice grew louder and more confident. We've struggled while he's been sitting on a mountain of potential. That inheritance should be shared. We deserve it more than he does. He's just going to sit on it. But how do we get him to see that? Stephen asked. You saw how he reacted tonight. Leave that to me, Vanessa replied, her tone turning calculating. Men his age are vulnerable, especially when they're lonely. If gentle persuasion doesn't work, we have other options. What kind of options? Legal ones. Think about it, Stephen. He's getting older. He's forgetful. We could contest his mental state. We could claim he's being influenced by his grief over Arthur. There are precedents for this. We could have him declared incompetent. My hands began to shake, not from fear, but from a rage so pure it felt like ice in my veins. I don't know, Vanessa, Stephen whispered. That seems extreme. $15 million, Stephen. That's extreme wealth for someone who will probably be gone in 10 years anyway. Why wait? We could pay off the mortgage, travel to Europe, put the kids in that private academy. We could finally start living. What if he says no again? Vanessa's laugh was soft and dangerous. He won't. I know how to handle your father. A little guilt about his grandkids, a few tears about our debts, and he'll cave. He's always been soft. The clock read 12:20 a.m. when their voices finally faded into silence. I lay there until the first light of dawn broke through curtains, processing every word. I thought about the casual dismissal of my life, the cold calculation of my death, and betrayal of the son I had given everything to. By the time I heard them stirring above me at 7 a.m., something fundamental had changed. The loving, generous father who had sacrificed his own retirement to help his son was gone. In his place was a man who had spent 40 years managing complex projects and navigating difficult people. They thought I was weak. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I got up and brewed a pot of coffee, my movements precise and methodical. The kitchen filled with the aroma of roasted beans, and I sat at the small table, waiting. They thought they knew me. They thought they could manipulate a lonely old man. I closed my eyes and remembered Sarah's hospital room 10 years ago. She was dying, and I had held her hand every single night. Stephen had visited exactly twice. Take care of him, she had whispered. But David, don't forget to live for yourself. I had failed her by enabling Stephen's laziness for far too long. I thought about his college tuition, 4 years of 80-hour work weeks, so he could graduate debt-free. He had thanked his friends and his girlfriend in his graduation speech, but he hadn't even mentioned me. I thought about the $150,000 I had loaned them for their home 5 years ago, money from my own retirement fund that was never repaid. I had been an ATM with a heartbeat, and they were ready to pull the plug the moment the cash stopped flowing. I heard the stairs creak. Vanessa entered the kitchen first, dressed in a soft sweater that screamed approachable and innocent. Stephen followed, looking like a man who hadn't slept, his eyes avoiding mine. "Good morning, David," Vanessa said, her voice like honey. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I replied simply. "Coffee's hot. Help yourselves." Vanessa poured 2 cups and sat across from me. "We've been thinking about last night, about the inheritance." "Have you?" I asked, sipping my coffee. Stephen leaned forward. "Vanessa has some good points, Dad. About family responsibility. About sharing our blessings. We're not asking for charity," Vanessa added, her finger stroking Stephen's arm. "We're talking about securing the family's future. You raised Stephen to work hard, but sometimes even the best people need a boost. And with $15 million, you don't really need all that, do you? At your age, what would you even do with it?" "That's not your concern," I said, my voice cold. Vanessa's mask slipped for a fraction of a second. "But it is our concern. We're family, and family looks out for each other. Don't you want Chloe and Leo to have the best start in life? Don't be selfish, David." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray December morning. "You think I'm selfish?" I turned back to face them. "I've spent 35 years wanting things for my son instead of for myself. I've spent over $400,000 on your lives, college, your house, your emergencies. And yet, you sit in my kitchen and call me selfish because I won't hand over my brother's legacy. We deserve that money." Vanessa snapped, her patience finally evaporating. "You're just going to hoard it like an old miser. You're old and you're useless, David. We have our whole lives ahead of us." The words hung in the air like poison. Stephen flinched, but he didn't contradict her. "Is that what you think, Stephen?" I asked. "That I'm useless?" He couldn't look at me. Maybe we do deserve it more," he whispered. "I see," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "In that case, I have a request. Get out." They froze. "What?" Vanessa gasped. "Pack your things and leave my house. Now." "David, be reasonable." Vanessa shouted. "There is nothing reasonable about what you planned." I said, "I heard you last night. I heard everything. The plan to declare me incompetent, the options, the casual way you discuss my death. You have 10 minutes to clear out." I watched from the window as they scrambled to their car, tossing bags into the trunk. Vanessa was screaming at Stephen, her face twisted with rage. As they pulled out the driveway, I saw her lips move through the window. "This isn't over." I didn't doubt her, but they had started a war they couldn't possibly win. I walked to my desk and dialed a number I had saved years ago, Vance and Associates Legal Services. "Elena? It's David. I need to start Project Justice." "Yes, it's time." 3 weeks of silence followed, but I knew better than to think they had given up. On a Tuesday afternoon, the doorbell rang. A process server handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a petition for determination of incapacity. They were actually doing it. They were claiming I had dementia, that I was making irrational financial decisions, and that I was unable to manage my own affairs. They had even managed to freeze $500,000 of my existing savings pending a court hearing. The audacity of it was breathtaking. They had included witness statements from neighbors I barely knew and a medical report from a Dr. Patricia Williams, who, after a quick search, I discovered was Vanessa's college roommate and a pediatrician, not a geriatric specialist. I drove straight to Elena Vance's office. She was a sharp, no-nonsense attorney who had handled my brother's estate. I laid the documents on her desk. "This is fraud, plain and simple," Elena said, her brow furrowed as she scanned the pages. "But we have to play this carefully. If they want to challenge your mental state, we'll give them the most thorough evaluation they've ever seen." The next week was a whirlwind. I underwent comprehensive cognitive testing with Dr. Julian Sterling, one of the top neurologists in the state. I spent hours performing mental gymnastics, pattern recognition, mathematical calculations, and memory assessments. Mr. Anderson, Dr. Sterling said, reviewing the results, your cognitive function isn't just normal, it's in the 96th percentile. You're sharper than most 40-year-olds I see. Good, I said. I'll need that in writing. But the legal defense was only the first phase. I returned home and opened my laptop. I had spent my career as a project manager. I knew how to organize data. I created a spreadsheet titled Financial Recovery Action. I spent days going through 30 years of bank statements. Every loan I had given Stephen was documented. Every time I had paid a bill for them, I had kept a receipt. I found every promissory note he had signed in a moment of desperation. The total came to $512,000, including modest interest. Meanwhile, Vanessa was waging a war of her own. She had taken to social media, posting sob stories about elderly family members hoarding wealth while children go hungry. She used old photos of the grandkids from when they were sick to make them look neglected. The community was starting to turn against me. Neighbors I'd known for years were giving me the cold shoulder at the grocery store. The climax came at the monthly neighborhood association meeting. Vanessa had requested time to speak about elder abuse awareness, but it was clearly a trap to humiliate me publicly. The community center was packed. Vanessa stood at the podium, tears streaming down her face as she showed photos of her empty pantry and overdue bills. My father-in-law has $15 million, she sobbed, and he won't even help us keep the lights on. We're facing homelessness while he lives in luxury. A murmur of outrage rippled through the room. People were looking at me with disgust. Thank you, Vanessa, the board president said. Mr. Anderson, would you like to respond? I stood up and walked to front, carrying a manila folder and a laptop. I connected my computer to the projector. I think it's important we look at the facts, I said calmly. I pulled up the spreadsheet. Over the last 30 years, I have provided $512,000 in financial support to Stephen and Vanessa. This includes their house down payment, 3 cars, and countless emergency loans. The room went quiet. Now, I continued, let's look at Vanessa's social media posts from the last year. I flipped through slides of their recent vacations to Maui, Vanessa's new designer handbag collection, and a customized motorcycle Stephen had bought 2 months ago. These were all posted during the same weeks they claimed to be starving. Gasps echoed through the room. I saw Margaret Patterson, my next-door neighbor, look at Vanessa with narrowed eyes. And finally, I said, here's a report from Dr. Julian Sterling, confirming that I am in perfect mental health. The petition my son filed to have me declared incompetent was based on a fraudulent report from a pediatrician who happens to be Vanessa's best friend. The silence was deafening. Vanessa tried to speak, but her voice failed her. Stephen looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. They were exposed, their lies laid bare in front of everyone whose opinion they valued. But I wasn't finished. The following morning, Elena Vance served them with a countersuit. We were suing for defamation, fraud, and immediate repayment of the $512,000 in documented loans. Because they had challenged my competency, I was no longer forgiving the debts as a father. I was collecting them as a creditor. The fallout was swift. Stephen's employer, a local firm that valued its reputation, put him on unpaid leave after the incompetency scandal went public. Their social circle evaporated overnight. Without my monthly subsidies and facing a massive legal debt, their artificial life began to crumble. A week later, Stephen showed up at my door. He looked broken. Vanessa had left him, taking the kids to her mother's house in another state, unable to handle the social death she had brought upon herself. Dad, Stephen said, standing on the porch, I have nothing. The bank is foreclosing. The cars are being repossessed. I'm so sorry. I looked at my son. I didn't feel the triumph I thought I would. I just felt a profound sense of relief that the lies were over. I'm not giving you the money, Stephen, I said. That $15 million is being placed into a blind trust for Chloe and Leo's education and their future. You won't touch a cent of it. I understand, he whispered. However, I continued, I am still looking for a project assistant for a new charitable foundation I'm starting in Arthur's name. It's hard work, long hours, low pay, but it's a job, and you'll pay back your debt to me out of every paycheck." He looked up, tears in his eyes. "You'd let me work for you?" "I'd let you work for the legacy you tried to steal." I corrected, "It's time you learn the value of a dollar you actually earned." As the months passed, the garden I had planted in the winter began to bloom. Stephen was there every weekend, helping me clear the brush and restore the property. He was thinner, humbler, and for the first time in his life, he was present. The $15 million didn't make me happy, but using it to protect my family's future and teach my son the meaning of integrity, that was worth every cent. I finally understood what Arthur had known all along. Wealth isn't about what you can buy, but what you can build, and we were finally building something that would last.